Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I am Ryan Wormeli, joined on this Thursday morning by Andrew Erickson and by Derek Brown. Fellas, we're talking must-start players here. In Week 10, we are already into the double-digit weeks. It is nuts. Let's dive right in here, starting with the running backs as always. DBro, we will start with you. Who is your top must-start running back of Week 10?
My main squeeze, my dude. Jaylen Warren, baby. Been a top 24 running back in more weeks than I can count on one hand. Yeah, it's true. Go check the numbers. This man has just been a monster in efficiency all season. He's fifth in explosive run rate, first in missed tackles forced per attempt. You've seen the film. You've seen the highlights. He's amazing, man. And this week, he gets another fantastic matchup. The Green Bay Packers can't stop anybody on the ground. 11th most fantasy points per game allowed to running backs. 8th most rushing yards allowed per game. Jaylen Warren, I understand he's probably only going to get somewhere between 12 and 15 touches in this game. Doesn't matter. He's going to explode. He's going to be awesome. Top 24 running back. Book it.
Are you expecting this to be his best game of the season? Going out on a limb?
Ooh. Sure.
Giving you the chance to be bold. Last week was his best game so far with the 11 for 88 and the 3 catches for 25.
He gets 100 rushing yards this week. Let's go.
Big time. Love to hear it. Where are you at on Jaylen Warren, Erickson?
I mean, it's just a matter of, are they going to lean more into him and not Najee Harris? Like, that's ultimately like what's kind of hindering his ceiling. And if they use Najee in the red zone, then that obviously hurts Warren. But it's hard to argue with how they've looked, and the matchup is obviously good. So, yeah, I think Warren's a strong RB2 play this week.
I think Pittsburgh just leans into the ground game. I've got both him and Najee both as top 24 running backs this week.
Erickson, it sounds like you're not predicting that he's going to have his best game of the season in this one.
No.
All right, that's fair. Erickson, give me your top must-start running back.
James Conner. James Conner looks like he's going to be back for the Arizona Cardinals this week, so obviously he has to play for you to play him in your fantasy lineup, but I think they're done with the Keontae Ingram, DeMercado, like these guys. They're not going to go back to these other Cardinals running backs. Like, James Conner's back. I do not think it's going to be a snap count. I think it's going to be like the average role that we've had. And it actually could be his role plus, because if we recall when James Conner, before he got hurt, he was actually losing out on third down snaps to Amari DeMercado. DeMercado's still hurt. So if he's not giving up those third down snaps, like, you're looking at James Conner like 80%, 85% snap share in a really good matchup against the Falcons. Look, Falcons defense on the year looks good against the run, but the last 2 weeks, no Grady Jarrett. What's been the result? Nearly 100 rushing yards per game. So I think James Conner is a top 20 running back if he plays this week, and I think that you should feel confident taking him off your IR spot, taking him off the bench, putting him in your lineup, even after he's missed so much time.
DBro, how aggressively are you going to rank Conner in his first game back?
If he is back, yeah, I think this is his backfield. I'm going to put him as a top 24 running back for the week.
He's at, let's see, an ECR.
I've got him right outside of it. I got him at RB 28 just because I'm waiting on news and stuff. So
yeah, he's down at RB 43 in ECR, but that's because people are still, some folks have not ranked him yet. Given
once we get the updates, he'll be there.
Projections have him at RB 21, like for like reference. Like if he's in his regular role, like he should be top 24 running back.
He should be a top 24 running back. Agreed.
All right, DBro, give me your next must-start guy.
It's got to be Tyler Allgeier. Looking at just the matchup, and we know what Arthur wants to do with the backfield. He wants to give touches. We got a 6-minute plus soliloquy about this yesterday, where he basically pandered, sounded like a pseudo politician, didn't want to answer the question when he was given the question. Could have been a really short, easy answer. Yes, Bijan Robinson is very good. I will give him the ball. I promise. I want to affect change, and he didn't do that. He just kept pandering and talking about, well, Tyler Allgeier has a set of skills and we need to use those skills and blah, 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 blah. So Tyler Allgeier needs to be started in lineups because if the Atlanta Falcons are going to use him, this matchup is fantastic. 3rd most fantasy points per game allowed to running back, 6th most rushing yards per game. So Tyler Allgeier, probably 12 to 15 touches, and maybe he scores this week.
He is RB 29 in half PPR. Is that too high, too low, just right?
It's just right, because I think that there also is an avenue for Bijan Robinson to fully take over this week or just to crush. So I've got Bijan ranked aggressively. I've got Tyler Allgeier in the same in the same ilk. He's RB30 for me, but I think you can make a case anywhere for him, RB24, 25-ish into the 30s.
I certainly hope you're right about Bijan, but you are a lot more optimistic than I am about the possibility of him taking over the backfield.
Man,
I just don't know what you've seen that would make you think he would do that. It might be blind faith, but I
mean, at this point, it kind of is, but I mean, I'm willing to just keep the blindfold on at this point because I can't look at Arthur Smith anymore.
Why would we ever trust Arthur Smith to do the right thing at this point? We wouldn't, is the answer. There are always fun questions around the NFL this time of year, like who are the pretenders, who are the contenders? We're now more than halfway through the NFL season, but DraftKings Sportsbook is still pumping out unbeatable offers every single game. New customers can bet just $5 on anything to get $200 instantly in bonus bets, and DraftKings isn't stopping there. All customers can take advantage of a sweetener offer every game day this November. The Week 10 slate doesn't look amazing, but there are still 9 games with an early spread of 3.5 points or less on DraftKings, so there should be tons of close finishes this week. Plus, I cannot wait to watch CJ Stroud and Joe Burrow go head-to-head in Cincy in my favorite game of the week. Even though the Bengals are laying a touchdown against the Texans, I think that's going to be an awesome game. However you guys plan to bet that one, get in on the football action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the app now and use code FANTASYPROS. New customers can bet just $5 on anything to get $200 instantly in bonus bets only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code FANTASYPROS. The crown is yours. Erickson, give me your next must-start running back.
Rachaad White, he's heating up, baby. He was just fine all year long, but finally the snaps, the touches, finally turned into production. So as someone that is heavily in the Rachaad White streets, I'm very happy to see what we've seen play out over the last couple weeks. And I think that a lot of it's related to the receiving role. His receiving usage has really picked up. So again, not the most efficient rusher, but he's starting to find the end zone a little bit more here and there. The Buccaneers are a team that was going to regress in terms of their pass touchdown rate versus their rush touchdown rate. Like to start the year, they were only scoring touchdowns through the air. So again, those things don't necessarily last. So we saw last week Rachaad White score twice. Not saying he's going to score twice again, but looking at the Titans' run defense, usually it's a matchup you want to shy away from. Last 2 weeks, they've allowed 257 rushing yards. Najee Harris was competent against the Titans' run defense. So
it's top 15 running back Najee Harris to you, sir.
If Najee Harris can be a competent running back against a defense, anybody can be a competent running back against that same defense. So no one else is eating into White's snaps whatsoever. Sean Tucker, where are you? I was told that Sean Tucker was going to take over this backfield. Never saw him play. So after a slow start, I think that you got to be ranking. You have to feel really good about White. And I think that he's like a top 15 running back like rest of the season.
What do you attribute the Titans defense, run defense kind of falling off to, if anything? Because you're right, this was a matchup that we were like desperately avoiding early on in the year. Is there anything that's changed in the last couple of weeks?
I'd have to look closer to see if there's been an injury or anything like along those lines. But again, a lot of defensive stats are just based on the offenses that you play. So, I could look and say, the Titans haven't really played any good running backs. So, maybe that's why they've been so elite against the run. A team that's just been traditionally good against running backs, but they've been exposed the last couple weeks against teams that want to run the football. And again, that's just that's not you're playing Rachaad White because he's going to score a lot of rushing yards. Like, you're playing because he gets all the touches and he catches passes out of the backfield. So he's already offering you a decent floor, but the matchup I just want to bring to people's attention, it's not as bad as you may look at it on the surface when you look at the total season numbers for the Titans.
DBro, hit me with your next must-start running back.
Well, my next guy, and this is not a name that I've mentioned very much on this show. I don't know if I even talked about him at all this year on this show, but Alexander Mattison. I'm going to bring him up because, again, we're talking about run defenses that have faltered in recent weeks. That is absolutely the New Orleans Saints. Over the last 5 games, they allowed the 2nd highest explosive run rate, 10th highest yards after contact per attempt, and 14th highest yards per carry to zone runs. With Cam Akers out, I think this is Madison's backfield. I'm not worried about Ty Chandler because the Vikings weren't worried about Ty Chandler. Cam Akers came in via trade and took Ty Chandler's job. So what does that say about Ty Chandler? So do we think that he's going to overtake or even play the Cam Akers role in this backfield versus like now Alexander Mattison? So I think the Minnesota Vikings would be very smart to lean on their ground game, i.e. Alexander Mattison, stay away from that secondary this week and just feed him the ball. So 20 plus touches in line for Alexander Mattison. I think he scores this week. Top 24 running back. Let's go.
Erickson, I think Alexander Mattison is the guy you've most liked to talk about on our shows this whole season. So let me let you weigh in. Where do you have him this week?
I think he's a top 24 running back. Look, like I have to adjust my projections and forecasts when things change and Cam Akers is gone. So Mattison should be the guy there, should be the starting running back. Again, I don't think that he's the best running back in the NFL. And we'll see what Ty Chandler's role is if he has one at all. But based on what we've seen, the sample sizes, Mattison will do just enough. He gets passes out of the backfield. So I think that he's a fine start this week.
Erickson, let's stick with you. Who's your last must-start running back?
David Montgomery. He's playing the Chargers defense that has been really good against running backs in the last couple of weeks. It's weird because the Chargers have usually been a team we've picked on because of their bad run defense, but they've actually been very good and stout against the run this season. And there are question marks about, Jahmyr Gibbs, like they can't go back to David Montgomery. It's like, yes, they can. Dan Campbell loves David Montgomery. So, I have David Montgomery ranked higher than Jahmyr Gibbs this week. I'm not sure if that's like a hot take or if that's what the ECR has. But until I see Gibbs like unseat David Montgomery, then I'll adjust my rankings. But until that actually happens, I'm going to keep David Montgomery as my Lions RB1. If I had to sit one Lions running back, it would be Gibbs and not David Montgomery.
DBro, what are you expecting out of the split in this backfield?
It's funny because I have both them. They're next to each other in my rankings, and I do have Gibbs one spot ahead of Montgomery. I've got him RB15. Montgomery is RB16. I think if you're looking at touchdown expectations, Montgomery obviously has that, but I think if leaning into the matchup, I think that the Lions can go more pass heavy in this. We've seen them go more pass heavy over the last few weeks. So I think this could be more of a Gibbs game. I'm not going to say that it's going to be more of a split backfield. I think that just weekly moving forward with David Montgomery back, this is going to be a backfield that's dependent upon matchups and game script. And I just think the matchup leans itself more to the Chargers, allowing production to receiving back. So I'll take Gibbs just barely over Montgomery this week.
Let's jump into the Who Do I Start tool. This is free to use for anybody at fantasypros.com/start. Anybody can head there, put in their own starter sit questions, up to 4 players at a time. You can even pick and choose which experts your decision draws from. It can be DBro, it can be Erickson, it can be both, or it can be neither, as I let everybody know every week. Again, that is free to use at fantasypros.com/start. DBro, are you starting Jaylen Warren or Jerome Ford this week?
I've got Jerome Ford one spot ahead of Warren, and it's just a volume play. I think you're looking at floor, it's Ford. If you go ceiling, it's Warren for me.
You're saying Jaylen Warren's gonna have his best game of the year, and you have Jerome Ford ranked over him? Are you serious?
Jerome Ford had 25 touches last week? I mean, look, I'm forecasting things. I'm not insane.
Since, like, it started.
I'm not insane. Okay.
I have Jaylen Warren over Jerome Ford. I don't think Jaylen Warren's going to have his best game of the year. So there's a disconnect.
I guess I got to change my ranks. Let me go update the ranks.
I was going to try and be nice and let that slide. I was also surprised that was the answer we got, given how effusively praising DBro was of
and who's better as a rusher this year?
Peer pressured. Peer pressured. Jaylen Warren over Jerome Ford in my ranks. Just knowing this to the people. Peer pressured.
For whatever it's worth, Jerome Ford, when he faced the Ravens in week 4, finished RB30 in half PPR. So that's the Marquise trying to beat.
So not his best game of the year is what you're telling me. I want to be clear.
Here we go.
Thank you for jumping in there, Erickson. Like I said, I was trying to be nice, but I think that was close. DBro, Alexander Mattison or Najee Harris, the other Steelers running back.
I'm going to go Mattison on this one.
All right, and how about Tyler Allgeier or Brian Robinson?
Oh, it's Allgeier by a mile. I want nothing to do with B-Rob this week. Erickson, you going to get on the Brian Robinson podium?
I agree. Brian Robinson was a guy I don't like. I don't want to start him this week.
I'm just getting flamed by you. I was just expecting it to be coming. I didn't know.
Erickson, James Conner or Keaton Mitchell? I'm assuming you'll go with Conner.
Yeah, I just, again, Keaton Mitchell, just don't know what his role is going to be. So, and if the matchup was better, I'm always going to take the touches.
Put the over for James Conner's snaps to be over 14 this week. So I think we're going to go with Conner.
How about David Montgomery or Javonte Williams?
This one, I'm going to go with Javonte.
Yes,
I mean, look, we saw such a massive workload for him before the bye week, and it's a great matchup against the Bills. Again, so I like Javonte.
They're back-to-back in ECR, but I'm with you. I think it's a clean sweep. I think we all like Javonte better. How about Rachaad White or Jahmyr Gibbs?
Rachaad White. He's a bell cow, and Gibbs is not.
Yeah. How about, and these guys are actually back-to-back in ECR, Rachaad White or David Montgomery, two of your players.
Oh.
I think I have Montgomery because, again, I like the touchdown equity with Montgomery more than
So
White.
all I heard is you don't like Rachaad White as much this week than David Montgomery.
Well, no, I mean, I did have David Montgomery also as a start, so I'm allowed to have a start over another start
DBro's
player.
just trying to get you back, Erickson, and he knows he can't. He's lost.
Well, it's because my rankings match my takes, so that's all I'm saying.
Oh, my Lord. Here we go.
With there.
Here we go.
All right, DBro.
Well. The gloves are off, baby.
Give me your top must-start wide receiver, DBro.
My guy's gonna be Calvin Ridley. I'm gonna have him ranked aggressively this week, and I understand people have been out on Calvin Ridley. I get it's been a bumpy and crazy ride. It's been a roller coaster, people. But this week, I think we're gonna see a ceiling performance from Calvin Ridley. Since week 5, the 49ers have been giving up more production to wide receivers. They have been struggling versus the deep ball. They have also utilized single high coverage on 55% of their defensive snaps. Why does this matter? It's because Calvin Ridley is eaten versus single high this year. 25% target share, 46% air yard share. His yards per route run jumps above 2. He leads this team in deep targets. Calvin Ridley is going to have a top 24 wide receiver week. Let's go.
Erickson, how aggressively are you being on Ridley this week?
I think I'm wide receiver 2 range. I think he's a good start. This is a matchup where the Jaguars receivers should be able to take advantage. I mean, the 49ers are another one of these pass funnel defenses that teams just really like to throw against them. So there should be a lot of volume in this matchup for Calvin Ridley. And when he's gotten volume, he's usually delivered decent games this week.
Erickson, I got him at wide receiver 16. Is that okay, or am I drunk?
I think that's fine. I mean, do you have him behind or ahead of Kirk is my follow-up.
I have him ahead of Kirk. Looking at the single high coverage, his target share has dropped to 16%. So I think we're going to see a wide margin favoring Calvin Ridley this week.
But you think that, I like both guys to start. I mean, you'd still start Kirk, though.
Yeah,
right?
I still got Kirk is still a top 24 wide receiver for me.
Okay.
All right, Erickson, who's your top must-start wide receiver?
DK Metcalf. Dude, the planets are aligning for Metcalf to go absolutely nuclear this week against the Washington Commanders. Who's on the injury report? Tyler Lockett and Jaxon Smith-Njigba. DK Metcalf. Look, everyone is complaining about Metcalf. They're like, Geno Smith, he can't play anymore. It's like, oh yeah, well, you know what happens when you play the Ravens and Browns in back-to-back weeks? Your numbers aren't going to look good. Like, let's give some context to Geno Smith, who people are like, maybe they should play Drew Lock. Are you guys serious? They played the Browns and Ravens in back-to-back weeks, number 1 and number 2, past DVOA. Spoiler, any quarterback that would have played those defenses would have looked bad. And the week before against the Cardinals, where the Geno Smith didn't play as well, you know who didn't play in that game? DK Metcalf. So Metcalf, fully healthy, not on the injury report, unlike his other wide receiver teammates against the Commanders, 3rd most fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. He caught 1 pass last week for 50 yards. Like, he's still seeing a ton of red zone targets. He has 8+ targets in 3 of his last 5 games. He leads the Seahawks in receiving yards. Like, that should be a bonus question. It's like, who leads the Seahawks receiving yards this year? People will be like, it's Metcalf? Yes, it is DK Metcalf, and he's missed a game. So I think that people that, if you're worried about Metcalf, I know he's been disappointing. He's been like a wide receiver 4 this year on the season. He's going to bounce back big here. I think that this could be a monster game for Metcalf, so he needs to be in all starting lineups.
Has anybody seen Drew Lock play football? Like, when you said that, I was like, people really can't be saying that, right?
There are a lot of takes about Geno Smith being like, oh, he's turned back to a pumpkin. He's not good anymore. It's like, guys, like, he's had really tough matchups the last couple of weeks. Like,
the passing touchdowns haven't gone his way. If you look at the deeper metrics, Geno is not playing bad football, okay? So people need to... Drew Lock?
I'm very much with you on Geno versus Lock. That's absurd. I will just say to Metcalf, it's not just the last couple of weeks. Like, he has not finished as a wide receiver 20 or higher at all this season in half PPR scoring. He's been 21, 40, 23, 25, 36, 42, 47. So I get why people are frustrated beyond just the last couple of weeks.
How many touchdowns does he have?
2. I think he has 1 in week 1 and 1 in week 4.
Yeah, so that's the thing. That's the thing that's missing is just the touchdowns, and they're going to come. So
okay, where do you have him ranked, Erickson? I forget if you said that.
Wide receiver, it's either 9 or 10.
Oh,
my top 10.
Yeah,
I've got him as a wide receiver 2. I've got him
ECR has him wide receiver 12. So I mean that's really high for a guy that again we talked about like hasn't even been close to that at any point this season. So
yeah, DBro, who's your next must start guy?
The next guy I'm going to bring up here has got to be DeAndre Hopkins. Going against Tampa Bay, they cannot guard wide receivers. Their pass defense has been abysmal this year. Second highest PPR points per target. We've seen that he's getting fed the rock with Will Levis under center. 6th most receiving yards allowed this season to perimeter wide receivers. It's just another week where DeAndre Hopkins is going to get fed the ball, and he should be versus the secondary.
Hopkins is actually one spot ahead of Metcalf in ECR. He's wide receiver 11. Is that too high, too low, or just right, DBro?
No, I've got him in the same ilk. I've got T. Higgins over him, but I'm probably going to have to drop T. Higgins with a hammy issue. I mean, I think the conversation for Hopkins starts anywhere from wide receiver 7 to wide receiver 12 or 13. Somewhere in the mid to low wide receiver 1 range.
Where do you have Hopkins, Erickson? Again, he's wide receiver 11 in ECR.
I'm moving him up, so I'm probably moving him right actually behind DK Metcalf because look, it's a great matchup. He's seeing
what's that wide receiver 2 for the week?
There's no like who else is getting targets in the Titans? Is it going to be Kyle Phillips? Like is that bad? Because like Traylon Burks has a concussion. Like he
I kind of like Kyle Phillips this week, probably.
3K on DK. 3K on DK. I know.
Man's got rhymes, dropping bars.
Actually, quickly, DBro, who would you rather start, DK Metcalf or DeAndre Hopkins?
Oh, I'm going DeAndre Hopkins. I just think the matchup is fantastic. He's going to get fed the ball. And I don't disagree with any of Erickson's points here. And we're going to bring up another Seattle Seahawks wide receiver here in a second. But I think that DK can have a good game. I'm just higher on Hopkins.
Say goodbye to your own start-sit dilemmas with FantasyPros Start-Sit Assistant. Within seconds, you'll know exactly who to play for optimal results each and every week. Leveraging insights from numerous experts, the Start-Sit Assistant aligns your lineup decisions with the top minds in fantasy football, giving you a competitive edge. Maximize your lineup's potential with just a few clicks. Head to fantasypros.com/myplaybook and make winning decisions in no time. Erickson, give me your next must-start receiver.
Marquise Brown. Playing against the Atlanta Falcons at home. He's got Kyler Murray back. So instead of this like crazy uncatchable target rate that Marquise Brown has experienced this year, he's going to actually see targets within his radius where he can catch the ball. So just a reminder of what we saw with Kyler Murray and Marquise Brown last year. Wide receiver 6 through the first 6 weeks of the season. 8 games played without DeAndre Hopkins last year for Kyler Murray and Marquise Brown. Brown was averaging nearly 12.3 fantasy points per game in half PPR. That was wide receiver 15 last year. So I think this is a really good spot for Marquise Brown, who has just been getting absolutely I mean, he's so clearly the number one guy in that offense. He's Kyler Murray's boy. So I think Marquise Brown is in a really great bounce back spot. Even last week, I think he had like a 40% target share last week. Again, it's Clayton Tune, but Marquise Brown's clearly the alpha in his passing game. And I mean, I expect a lot from this Cardinals offense in Kyler Murray's first game back. Maybe I know you might want to be bearish on Kyler Murray because you're not really sure, but I think this is an opportunity where you want to be a little bit more aggressive and start these guys in a good matchup at home.
He's a wide receiver 3 in ECR. He's wide receiver 26 and half point PPR. That does seem a little low to me. Deeper, where do you have Hollywood?
I've got him at wide receiver 24, but Nico Collins is banged up. I can move him up to wide receiver. I think the conversation should be anywhere from mid wide receiver 2, like wide receiver 18 to 24 for this week. Like Marquise Brown needs to be a top 24 guy.
I was going to say that like 20 to 22 range seems right. I think 26 is too low. DBro, you referenced it or alluded to it that you have a Seahawks receiver coming up. Who you got?
So assuming, and I know that he's on the injury report, so going to give the caveat there, but assuming that he plays, I think Jaxon Smith-Njigba is just going to stack another fantastic week this week. Looking at the Washington secondary, since they've quietly been struggling versus slot wide receivers, fifth highest PPR points per game allowed, or PPR points per target allowed to slot wide receivers, tied for the most receiving touchdowns in the NFL allowed to slot wide receivers. So Jaxon Smith-Njigba, we have seen the differing usage for him over the last few weeks. A-Dot's kind of come up. He's been getting more work in the red zone. He scored some touchdowns. I think assuming health this week, and again, that's the caveat. Is he going to play? Is he healthy? I think Jaxon Smith-Njigba needs to be in your lineups.
So DK Metcalf is wide receiver 12 this week. It is all in ECR. Tyler Lockett's wide receiver 22, and JSN is wide receiver 37. Is JSN your favorite relative to where each is individually ranked?
Yes, I've actually got JSN over Tyler Lockett this week. I've got JSN at wide receiver 29. I've got Tyler Lockett at wide receiver 33. So I'm kind of flipped, and I'm higher on this passing attack as a whole. But I think if you're not playing DK Metcalf as the wide receiver 1 in this offense this week, I think Jaxon Smith-Njigba is the 2 this week.
Erickson, who's your last must-start receiver?
Rashid Shaheed taking on the Minnesota Vikings. Look at what Shaheed's done this year. When they've played defenses that play mostly zone coverage, like Shaheed has really been one of the more productive receivers for the New Orleans Saints. You look at the Vikings, they run mostly zone coverage, top 10 zone coverage rate this season. And we look at some of the DVOA metrics, specifically what the Vikings do against number 3 wide receivers, 4th in targets to number 3 wide receivers. So Shaheed is one of these flex guys that you have on your bench. You're like, do I start him this week? Do I don't start him this week? I think this is a week you can flex him. So again, if you don't feel good about like your a third running back in your flex spot, you're like, I need more upside. I think Shaheed can deliver an upside play here. And if we're just, looking at trends, last 2 games Shaheed has gone off, been road games in domes. Rinse and repeat, baby. Rashid Shaheed. Let's go.
DBro, I always say you're the Saints guy. What do you think about Shaheed?
I think he needs to be somewhere hovering around the wide receiver 3 conversation. I think that he's already flashed a ceiling multiple times this season. I mean, I could easily point to the 100-yard receiving game, but he's also got receiving games of 80 plus littering his resume this year. So I'm a little bit higher on Michael Thomas than Shaheed this week, just looking at where Derek Carr has gone when he's been blitzed and knowing that the Vikings are, if there's anything the Vikings are going to do outside of play zone, they're going to blitz the ever-living heck out of Derek Carr this week. So I think that Michael Thomas gets a little bit of a bump in that respect, but the answer could be just start all your Saints wide receivers this week.
DBro, are you starting Calvin Ridley or Tank Dell?
Oh, good Lord. You're parsing between 2 of my loves this week. I've got Calvin Ridley only 3 spots ahead of Tank Dell, so people might be surprised about that, but Tank Dell I've got as a wide receiver 18 this week. I'm going Ridley, but it's close.
Dell, both guys are lower in ECR than you have him, but Dell is actually higher in ECR by a couple of spots. So that is going against the grain a little bit, but you're obviously aggressive on both of them this week. How about DeAndre Hopkins or Michael Pittman?
Oh, it's Hopkins. I think considering the matchup as well as the target share, and not to say that Pittman's not going to get targets, and it's not a bad matchup for him. He's actually taken over the man coverage role or man coverage beater role for the Colts, as well as Josh Downs is banged up. But I'm going to go Hopkins here.
And then on JSN, like I said, he's ranked down in kind of like that wide receiver 4 range. He's wide receiver 37 in ECR. So who are some names that you're starting him over that might surprise people?
I'll start him over Jerry Jeudy. I'm going to start him, I said, over Tyler Lockett. I will consider, depending on what you need for your team, if it's a case of ceiling, I think he's in the conversation to start over Jordan Addison this week, too.
Okay. Erickson, how about DK Metcalf or Brandon Ayuk?
Oh.
No, I guess they'll start Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah,
I had to see where the line of demarcation was for that one.
Couldn't get that aggressive, but obviously so
if you said, and even though I have to update my rankings, you said Devontae Adams or DK Metcalf, I would probably say Metcalf, just because the vibes with Metcalf are so much better than Adams is right now.
Wow.
It's a horrible matchup for Adams.
First the Jets. Oof.
Yeah.
It's just, and like it's tough to like kind of reprogram my brain with Adams because I'm like, well, he has a rookie quarterback, and like rookie quarterbacks are just bad for their receivers. So it's something I'm trying to kind of reprocess. But
and
I think
Antonio
Metcalf has a
Pierce,
much higher
baby, he's
ceiling.
all about feeding some Josh Jacobs these days.
Yeah,
man.
that's the other thing too. And if you look at the Jets defense, like they
beat
can
them on
be
the
beat
ground
more through the ground than through the air. So I mean, Adams had one first half target last week.
How about Marquise Brown or Chris Godwin?
I do like Chris Godwin this week. I actually almost thought about making him one of the starts, but I wanted to dive deeper with Shaheed. But when it comes to just the target share and the touchdown upside, I think Marquise Brown is still the guy I prefer.
Hollywood, baby.
Shaheed is wide receiver 40 in ECR as of this morning. So same question as I asked DBro for JSN. Who are some names that might surprise people that you are starting Shaheed over this week, Erickson?
I mean, I would probably start him over a lot of running backs that I just don't feel great about. I'm like, oh, this running back, like, why do I want to play this guy? Like the floor running backs, essentially. Like, I want to play Shaheed over those guys because we know Shaheed can boom off these massive games. I think this is a spot where he can have a big game again against the blitz. If he gets man looks, you could see him ripping off a big play if it doesn't go to Michael Thomas. So that's why I brought up Shaheed. But in terms of other receivers, I probably start him over. Like, I want to start him over Jacoby Myers. Michael Thomas, I would still start him over because I think Thomas is the floor guy. Like,
I got 2 for you, Erickson. Shaheed or Demario Douglas?
I think I would still start Douglas. I'd start Douglas still.
Shaheed or George Pickens?
I think I'd probably start Shaheed. I'd have to up them in rankings, but I think Shaheed just.
I like it.
When you have these boomer bust receivers that all kind of look the same, it's like, well, who has a better matchup? And it's like Shaheed. If you just look on the season, who do you think has more receiving yards this year between George Pickens and Rashid Shaheed? Right? Everyone would say George Pickens by like a landslide.
I think it's Shaheed,
right?
isn't it?
It's 521 Pickens, 501 Rashid Shaheed. It's like almost exactly the same.
Okay.
And their rankings don't necessarily reflect that
whatsoever,
they don't. Even though they have the exact same total amount of touchdowns. So I would go with Shaheed.
Let's move to the must-start quarterbacks, tight ends, and defenses / special teams. DBro, who you got at QB, TE, DST?
Special teams. Well, for this 3 packs, I'm gonna go start off with Kyler Murray, baby. I'm gonna put the money where the mouth is. Kyler Murray against the Atlanta Falcons, who have faltered in the last few weeks as a pass defense. Since week 5, Atlanta's allowed the 4th most passing touchdowns per game, 4th most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. I think Kyler Murray, he sounds the horn, man. I am back, and he is going to have a fantastic week this week. After Kyler Murray, staying on the teams' tight ends, for me, it has to be Hunter Henry. Looking at the matchup, he played his highest snap share since week 2. I think the health is better for Hunter Henry, and the matchup is there for him. Indy is allowing the 2nd most fantasy points to tight ends, 4th most receiving yards per game. So Hunter Henry is going to be a tight end 1 for me this week. And as far as the DST, Pittsburgh Steelers. They're going to demolish Jordan Love this week. Since week 5, they are DST 9. They are top 10 in pressure rate, sacks, and interceptions. Getting Cam Hayward back is a boost for this defense, but Joey Porter Jr. has been amazing. Everybody that's not a Yinzer might not be wise to this. Joey Porter Jr. has been the truth. That dude has been amazing. Like, it's kind of crazy to me why he has not been starting the entire year, but now that he's in the starting lineup, he's been shutting guys down. He shut down DeAndre Hopkins and shadowed him when they played the Titans. So can he do the same to Christian Watson? Fully believe he can.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Ravens, if Zay Flowers hadn't gotten to them in the draft, were going to take Joey Porter Jr. And if they had, like, the defense already, as it is, just adding
with him and Brandon Stevens on the outside, Worm, like, I mean,
I'm
that
glad
is
the Ravens got Zay Flowers, but it's fun to think about if they had gone the
I keep
Joey
thinking
Porter
about
Jr.
this offseason. What I want to see the Steelers do is go out, sign Jalen Johnson, and then you have a cornerback tandem du jour for the next 5 to 6 years with Joey Porter Jr. and Jalen Johnson.
What I want to see is for them not to do that, because I don't want to face that in the division. I want to ask you about Kyler. So he's currently an ECR QB 12. Some of the names around him: Sam Howell's QB 10, Geno Smith is 11, Russell Wilson's 13, Baker Mayfield 14. Are you starting Kyler over all these guys? The upside's, once he's on the field, the upside's really high.
I've got him as QB 10 this week. What I think is if you look at, I'm gonna bring up a name, and this could be blasphemy to a lot of people. I think there's a pretty good case to start Kyler Murray over Justin Herbert this week. The matchup's not good. Justin Herbert has not looked, he's looked like a shell of himself. This offense is struggling. And I think the Lions could stomp the Chargers. Erickson, where do you sit with that? Like, would you play Kyler over Justin Herbert? Am I insane?
No, I'd probably still play Justin Herbert. Still think Justin Herbert's good. And it still could be a shootout. It's in a dome. It's against the Lions. They're going to score points on their defense. So
Herbert's QB4 in ECR, so he is ranked very high. I think that might be a little high, though. Erickson, who's your quarterback, tight end, and defense?
Geno Smith. Look, back-to-back really bad weeks against two of the toughest defenses in the NFL in terms of the pass defense. That's not the case. The Commanders are one of the worst defenses. And if the Patriots had a semblance of life on offense, Mac Jones could have had a productive game, and they didn't have Jalen Reagor out there catching all the deep balls, or should I say, dropping all the deep passes. So I love DK Metcalf. We talked about the Seahawks receivers a little bit, and therefore I love Geno Smith. So I know he's been disappointed the last couple of weeks. I would go right back to him with confidence at home against the Commanders. I feel really great about Geno Smith. Tight end, third time brought him up, Trey McBride. I didn't feel great about marking him as a sit last week after coming off a 14-target game, but I was like, you know what, the matchup's out there, and he bombed. He was horrible. So I felt good about that, but I'm going back to him now because he's got Kyler Murray, and the matchup is there. This is the first time we've seen Trey McBride in an actual plus matchup for tight ends in the wake of the Zach Ertz injury. The Atlanta Falcons are allowing the most catches, second most targets to tight ends this season. So Trey McBride talked about how the team is feeling super energized and reinvigorated with Kyler Murray, with James Conner back in the fold. I really like this Cardinals offense a lot this week to put on a show at home in Murray's first game back. So McBride still had strong peripheral metrics, still had 5 targets or a 25% target share in Clayton Tune's first start. And maybe hopefully last start. So I like McBride this week. So if he gets, especially if he got dropped after a bomb game, I would scoop him up and start him this week. And then my must-start DST is the Seahawks defense. Sam Howell's a turnover-prone quarterback, threw some picks last week against the Patriots, gets sacked a lot, and they throw the ball a ton. So how do you get DST points, sacks, turnovers, and what starts that is dropbacks. It would not surprise me if the Commanders lead the NFL in dropbacks this week in Week 10. So that projects well for the Seahawks defense at home.
Erickson, are you starting Geno Smith or CJ Stroud this week?
Let me see. If I just want to be a prisoner of the moment, I would just start CJ Stroud. But
well, if you want to be right, too, you're starting CJ Stroud.
I'm going to start Geno Smith.
Stroud is QB7. Geno Smith is QB11 this week, but you're starting Geno, you said?
Yeah, Geno, if you just look at the implied team totals, the Seahawks have the 5th highest implied team total on the slate, and the Texans are not even in the top 15. So,
DBro,
do I see this right that you have Stroud QB5?
I sure do. I think the tank tail goes off. I think Dalton Schultz, you beat the Cincinnati pass defense, both with deep passing and via the tight end. I think Stroud has another banner game.
We will get out of here on that. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And as always, best of luck in Week 10 here for DBro and Erickson. I'm Ryan Wormeli. We'll see you again next week.